Hi there, welcome back to your favorite deep dive show on stories contemporary and consequential for India. This week, I take you inside the Trump administration and American politics to help you decipher the churn in India-United States relations under the mercurial president. As with every tunnel, so with this one, there's light at the end. And I would guide you through the darkness to the slivers of light already visible. Also, a little-known Srinagar NGO came out with a big report on Kashmir's unmarked graves this week, debunking the Pakistani myth-making on forced disappearances in the valley. Ably supported by the Tukre Tukre gang, this ecosystem had painted India as an occupier state. A young man in Kashmir has shown the courage to take on this unholy nexus and call their bluff. We should commend the effort. Let's get going.
You have countries like India, almost 1.5 billion people, China, with powerful economies, but they also have their own domestic political mechanisms and laws. So, when somebody tells you that they're going to punish you, you have to think, how can the leadership of those countries, of those big countries, which had difficult periods in their history too, that had to do with colonialism, with attacks on their sovereignty during prolonged periods of time, you have to understand that if one of them shows weakness, his political career will be over, so that influences his behavior. Just as the colonial era is now over, they have to realize that they cannot use this tone in speaking with their partners.
This was Russian President Vladimir Putin, friend of Donald, as he called the American president, giving some helpful advice on how not to deal with India. He said, you cannot talk down to a country like India, with its 1.5 billion people, with its history of colonialism, by which he meant perhaps that the memory triggers resistance even now. But then Trump is his own man. Remember, Putin made those comments fresh from an hour-long meeting with Prime Minister Modi in his limousine before their delegation-level talks in Tianjin on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. The optics of Modi-Putin-Xi attracted global attention this past week and made the geostrategic community read big geopolitical realignments. Those might be or might not be. But the bottom line is that the India-United States relations are at their lowest ebb since Nixon made those patronizing and uncharitable comments against Indira Gandhi in the 1970s. Indian public opinion towards Trump is souring as he publicly berates and name-calls the country and its leadership. Look at this post from former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, Prakash Singh. This captures the sentiment spot on. While we would successfully weather the tariff storm, the aftertaste these attacks leave are going to bruise the India-US relationship for some time to come. Trump calling India a dead economy, or as in this post, terming the relationship as one-sided, is factually wrong. The data is in black and white and for anyone to see. US deficit with China is $270 billion plus. With the European Union, it's $161 billion. With Mexico, $157 billion. With Vietnam, $113 billion. With Taiwan, $67 billion. With Japan, $62 plus billion. With South Korea, $60 plus billion. With Canada, $54 billion. Thailand, $41.5 billion. And India, thereabout, $41.5 billion. The American deficit is the least with India, in fact, as the numbers show. While India does maintain a surplus in goods and services trade with the United States, as also remittances by the Indian diaspora, the USA gets an equalizer through the profits American corporations make from their businesses in India. From the hundreds and thousands of Indian students spending billions of dollars on their American education, and the still evolving defense purchases that India has made over the last decade. First things first, This is not just Trump singling out India, even if it seems so. Recently, American ambassador to Copenhagen was summoned as the Danish intelligence found 3 American citizens fomenting dissent and secession among indigenous Inuit communities in Greenland against Denmark. Imagine, Denmark is a NATO ally and accusing America of attempting to break their country. Europe has been similarly slapped reciprocal tariffs, and every European leader is seething under the collar. Japan called off trade talks with the US in a huff just this week. I have always maintained on this show that this is not about Trump. This is about America as a declining empire of the 20th century, negotiating its terms of disengagement with the rest of the world in the present century. Trump is just the face of that process. Trump buying into private corporations, Trump seeking a state commission on private sales, Trump accepting a presidential plane as gift from Qatar, Trump raising tariff walls. All are apiece with the larger theme, an increasingly wobbly empire unsure of itself. And to be fair to him, President Trump himself has not crossed a certain red line in targeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi. His every attack on India is still prefaced by calling Modi his good friend. But those red lines have been smudged a great deal by Trump lackeys like Peter Navarro and Scott Bessent, both in responsible positions in the Trump administration. Navarro cut his teeth into geopolitics as a China hawk. His 2011 book was provocatively called Death by China and is said to have opened his doors to the Trump circle, with the president calling the book one of his top 20 favorite reads. Navarro wrote speeches and policy papers for Trump campaign, joining the White House in the first term. He went on to become the brain behind the isolationist and protectionist policies, as also targeting of China. Scott Bessent is a former partner at Soros Fund Management. Forbes has described him a Soros protégé, with their relationship going back to the 1991 Black Wednesday crisis that crushed the British pound. Originally a Democrat, having funded and supported Al Gore, Obama, and Hillary Clinton campaigns, Bessent wormed his way into the Trump second term via campaign fundraisers and personal donations. This past of both anti-China in the case of one and Democrat in the case of other, ironically, gives hope in the present for India. In the past 1 week, most heavyweight Democrat voices have come around to speak vocally on salvaging the flailing India-United States partnership. First up was Nikki Haley. The former Trump ally came out openly to defend the relationship through her multiple social media posts. Then came Indian-American community leaders Ro Khanna and Vinod Dham, one a Democrat congressman, another a Democrat-leaning tech guru. House Foreign Affairs Committee of the Democrat Party has been frequently expressing support for India through its posts on X. And while it might seem like that Democrats are rubbing it in, the New York Times, not a traditional friend of India, headlined its editorial Trump's India muddle. Influential voices like that of Richard Haass, President Emeritus of Council for Foreign Relations, a heavyweight of Washington, D.C. think tank circuit, has called the Trump's targeting of India misplaced and the Indo-US relationship as one of the building blocks of American foreign policy to bring India closer to put pressure on China, their original, present, and future rival. Nicholas Burns, till recently US ambassador to Beijing, has also taken a position and called the tariffs misguided and weakening American alliances. Former US Deputy Secretary of State for South Asia Kurt Campbell expressed shock at the direction things have taken on the Indo-US front. Quote, Modi is sending a very clear message to America, I have other options, he said in a television interview.
About India, I think all of us who've played a role in building this relationship are in shock and concerned by what we've seen in terms of the substantial degradation in relations in just a couple of weeks. And Modi is sending a very clear message to the United States, I have other options.
In a column co-authored with Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in the Foreign Affairs magazine, the duo has called the downturn regrettable, even egging Prime Minister Modi to not bend before Trump. There's a suggestion that this is temporary, that the larger India-United States relationship is intact. Sullivan even accused Trump of personally profiteering from a family crypto deal with the Pakistani side. Something is still not denied by the White House. But let me deal with the options that Campbell is alluding to. India's Russia relationship predates the American discovery of India as a strategic ally at the turn of the century. There's a history in which the United States played a key role in putting India tentatively in the Soviet camp, even as we practiced non-alignment. The result of which is that even today, 70% of India's military hardware is of Russian vintage. Operation Sindoor proved that, from the aging L-70 anti-aircraft guns to the cutting-edge supersonic BrahMos missiles. The Russian equipment provided the backbone of India's military response. India cannot wish it away. So shouldn't America. Coming to China. The India-China detente has been going on since October last year, when PM Modi and President Xi Jinping met in Kazan, Russia, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. It has its own dynamics and momentum. Trump might have only provided it more grist and media attention, more global talk points. But India's engagement with China is cautious, feel the stones cross the river approach. At least 20 rounds of military commander level talks at the borders and diplomats' dialogues in New Delhi and Beijing preceded Modi-Xi icebreaker in Kazan. The business relationship remains lopsided. During the SCO Summit, every Chinese panelist on our debates made this smug point, and not without substance. We can purchase more goods, that is, the Chinese can purchase more goods and services from India, provided we have something to give. Chinese manufacturing overcapacity is not a pain point for India alone. It is a global headache. There is no illusion about China becoming a friend of India at any point. It is not transmogrifying from a dragon to a panda, just that the flares of the dragon might pause, relishing as it is India's discomfiture with Trump's America. With China, it's a transactional trade relationship. Modi's engagement with China is to make sure a repeat of Galwan does not happen, having underscored the resolve to stare down and repulse the border mischiefs. On the other hand, with the United States, it's a people-driven kaleidoscope in which values of democracy provide a broad connect. There are 5 million Indian Americans who have played the role of Pied Pipers in getting the leaderships of the two nations to look in the same direction. Newly built defense ties, diaspora ties, software ties, the Silicon Valley Connect, the H-1B Visa Connect. It's being dissed by the mega constituency of Trump as of now. But deep down, the saner voices know the contribution this dynamic of India-US relations has made in American leadership post-Cold War. The talent supply chain from India has been as crucial as the goods supply chain from China in sustaining America's leadership for that much longer in the unipolar world of last 3 decades. A reconnect needs to be made. I can tell you, behind the cameras, phones are being worked, connections re-established, meetings arranged, even with the Trump circle. Ambassador Vinay Mohan Quatra is seen as a direct appointee of Prime Minister Modi, given his stint earlier in the PMO. Trump's pick as India ambassador, Sergio Gore, has direct ear of the president. As soon as he lands in New Delhi post his confirmations, we can expect to have a hotline with the White House. Trump inviting failed Marshal Asim Munir for dinner was akin to him inviting Hamas military chief Mohammad Daif or Yahya Sinwar to the White House a month after October 7 attacks. Imagine how Israel would have felt and responded. Someone in the White House team needs to get this right. Thankfully, an attempt, howsoever feeble, is being made. The State Department seems on a salvage mission, as this post by the American embassy in New Delhi showed. complete with Secretary Marco Rubio's face on it. There's hope. Hear this sliver from a speech Vice President J.D. Vance delivered in Jaipur while on his first visit to India in April.
That our nations have much to offer one another. And that's why we come to you as partners looking to strengthen our relationship. Now, we're not here to preach that you do things any one particular way. Too often in the past, Washington approached Prime Minister Modi with an attitude of preachiness, or even one of condescension. Prior administrations saw India as a source of low-cost labor on the one hand, even as they criticized the Prime Minister's government, arguably the most popular in the democratic world, and as I told Prime Minister Modi last night, he's got approval ratings that would make me jealous.
If this tone can return, where the United States is talking to India and not talking at us, and without pontification, then the relationship might return to an even keel. As another Donald, Rumsfeld of the Bush administration famously said post 9/11, "You deal with the America you get, not the America you wish for." We will deal with Trump the way he is and wait for the next president who gets it right. Moving on to the next one.
We urge comprehensive forensic investigation of 276 genuinely unmarked graves in Baramulla district using modern DNA testing techniques. Second, Pakistan should acknowledge its moral and humanitarian responsibility towards its citizens among the documented foreign militants and facilitate family visits to graves in accordance with the international humanitarian law norms. Third, international organizations and governments should reassess their understanding of Kashmir's humanitarian challenge based on empirical evidence. Most importantly, reconciliation efforts in Kashmir should be grounded in honest acknowledgement of complex realities rather than propagation of unsubstantiated narratives that may impede rather than advance the cause of justice and peace. Our research provides an empirical foundation for more informed, constructive base about Kashmir's past, present and future. The path to sustainable peace must begin with truth.
This press conference by a little-known Srinagar NGO in New Delhi went under the radars this week. This was a significant non-headline news event for Kashmir, so I decided to pick it up for you in this episode. The Save Youth, Save Future Foundation released data from a survey they have done on unmarked graveyards across the Kashmir Valley. The report, titled Unmarked Graves in Kashmir, Unraveling the Truth, turned out a big expose, if one more was needed, of Pakistani propaganda on Kashmir turmoil. The presence of Wajahat Habibullah, a former chairman of the National Commission for Minorities and India's first Chief Information Commissioner, and also a known Kashmir hand, lends credence to the report. The work of the NGO has busted the myth of thousands of unmarked graves in Kashmir as belonging to missing persons who were victims of repression by the Indian state. Had it been just Pakistani ploy, things would have been different. But an entire anti-national ecosystem pushed this narrative, creating a picture of enforced disappearances by the Indian state in conflict-torn Kashmir through the last 3 decades. It was a dangerous design. Back in 2009, under the patronage of the then UPA government of Congress Party, a bunch of these anti-nationals came together under the banner of Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society and released a report on these same unmarked mass graves in Kashmir. Look at these names. Angana Chatterjee is a known India baiter in the United States academia. She has lived off last 2 decades of her life dissing India's role in Kashmir before the United Nations and the US Congress. Gautam Navlakha is one of the prime accused in the urban Naxal case of Bhima Koregaon of 2018. He was found so dangerous even by the Congress-led UPA government that he was stopped from entering Kashmir and sent backpacking from the Srinagar airport in 2011 on the grounds that his presence would create a law and order situation. They are the same gang as Arundhati Roy, Binayak Sen, Varavar Rao, Stan Swami, among others. I have followed the work of some of them, as you also must have. They are bound together by a common sentiment. They show India as an aggressor in Kashmir, show Indian Army as an unscrupulous occupying force in Kashmir, and to lobby around the world for a pro-Pakistan position on Jammu and Kashmir. This is the Tukde Tukde gang. In December of 2009, they released this report called Buried Evidence, Unknown, Unmarked and Mass Graves in Kashmir. In this baseless and incendiary report, these anti-nationals claimed that conflict in Kashmir had led to over 8,000 enforced disappearances and death of 70,000 persons, mostly civilians. Based on their work, they claimed to have documented 2,700 unknown, unmarked and mass graves, containing 2,943 bodies across 55 villages in Bandipora, Baramulla and Kupwara districts of Kashmir. Connecting those findings with an unjust Indian state, the report back then called for an international intervention to counter the dangers and violence of Indian rule in Kashmir. Remember, this was the time when the then UPA government was actively considering removal of AFSPA from Kashmir. This report was a prelude and an attempt to create an echo chamber to facilitate the Congress government to carry out the emasculation of the Indian armed forces and to leave the valley an easy meat for the Pakistani terrorist state to scavenge upon. The work by Save Youth, Save Future Foundation counters this anti-national work of 2009 with meticulous data gathering on the ground. The revelations are not only a slap on the face of these anti-nationals, but throws a challenge to Pakistan. Let me get you the numbers. Of the 4,000 plus graves surveyed, the report found that a majority of 2,493 were of foreign terrorists, likely that most of them were Pakistani. In short, what the bunch of Congress-backed anti-nationals were trying to pass off as unmarked graves of disappeared individuals or Kashmiris are in fact of Pakistani terrorists killed by security forces, and that each grave is accounted for. The report follows years of ground surveys including geotagging, photography, oral testimonies, police data analysis to come to the conclusions. We spoke to the man behind this work, Wajahat Farooq Bhatt. Bhatt used to be a stone pelter in Srinagar before the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. Observing the changes and benefits to the people of Kashmir post the abrogation, Bhatt also turned around and started working on the youth of the valley. Drug de-addiction and justice for families who had lost their members to terrorists became his focus area. Listen to his story.
जो इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ें थी हमारी इस स्टडी में दैट इज वन ऑफ द एस्पेक्ट इज़ द क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ ग्रेव्स. We categorized these graves in 5 categories. Number 1, foreign militants. Number 2, local militants. Number 3, unmarked graves. Number 4, civilians. And number 5, the foreign tribals. I can say that the foreign fighters of 1947. इन कैटेगराइज की बेस पे हमने वी डिवाइडेड द डेटा एंड इन ही कैटेगराइज में हमें जो लोग जो ग्रेव्स मिले कितने परसेंटेज हमें अप्रॉक्सीमेटली 2400 जो ग्रेव्स थे देवर फॉरेन मिलिटेंट्स एंड टू अप्रॉक्सीमेटली 200 ग्रेव्स देवर local militants and 274 around there were unmarked graves and 9 were civilian graves and 70 were the invaders जो 1947 में यहाँ पे आए थे. एंड फाइनली जो सब्जेक्ट जो हमारा जो मकसद था इस स्टडी को स्टार्ट करने का एंड हमेशा यही होता है कि रिकन्सिलेशन तब होती है जब सच्चाई हो, जब ट्रुथ हो, एंड ट्रुथ हो जब आपके पास साइंटिफिक मेथड हो, साइंटिफिक डेटा हो जिससे आप ये प्रूव करें कि सच्चाई क्या है. एंड हमारी यही भी एक रिकमेंडेशन है कि दैट जो हमने जो 274 जो अनमार्क्ड ग्रेव्स हमें मिले हैं एंड वी रिकमेंड दैट एक साइंटिफिक एक DNA टेस्टिंग उन ग्रेव्स की भी होनी चाहिए दैट हु एक्चुअली दे आर. एंड at the end, there was a narrative of mass graves in Kashmir, mass graves of civilians in Kashmir, and I can tell you this thing that हमारा जो data है, and आपके सामने है, and जो with clarity, with facts, and जो हम reconciliation की बात करते हैं, and जो उसके लिए चाहिए तो we did that.
This is truly a marker of how things have changed on the ground. In the report, Bhatt has sought DNA tests and exhumations from these unmarked graves to establish beyond doubt the antecedents of those who are buried. The work of Bhatt has center staged not only Pakistan's inhuman abuse of its own citizens by turning them into terrorists, but also complicity of an ecosystem in India that thrived under the UPA government. This should go a long way in bringing transparency to the valley in a manner that builds long-enduring trust between its people and the rest of India. I have often focused on the separatist sentiment in Kashmir and gone after the likes of National Conference MP Agha Ruhollah Mehdi. But when you get stories like this one, where the same Kashmiris are working hard to dispel the notions of separatism of any kind, then it needs highlighted. Kashmir is changing. It should be a matter of record. Thanks for watching.